Story 1. My sister-in-law secretly DNA tested my adopted daughter, thinking she'd caught me in a lie, and then got mad when I laughed in her face. I, 30 male, have a daughter who's 6 years old. I am not biologically related to her at all. There is absolutely no blood relation between us. I was friends with her mother for mostly all of my childhood. We were never involved romantically and were always just great friends. She had her daughter at 23 with her 25-year-old husband. When my daughter was a newborn, about 3 months old technically, both her mother and father were unalived. I won't go into too much detail for privacy reasons, but it was a workplace shooting. My friend and her husband had worked in the same building, and were both killed. Both my friend and her husband had grown up with less than ideal families and didn't have any siblings, so there wasn't any next of kin for their daughter to go to. However, because I was close with them, I was able to adopt her. Even though I had been iffy about the idea of kids, I didn't want their daughter to grow up in foster care or around people who didn't have a connection to her bio parents, so I stepped in. My parents and siblings know that my daughter is not my actual daughter biologically speaking. My daughter, I'll call Lily for the post, also knows that she's adopted. I never really hid the fact that she was adopted. She knows her parents are dead and were killed by a bad man, but I'm saving the details for when she's older. Lily does not look like me at all. She looks exactly like her mother and biological dad. Most people assume that I'm her biological dad and that she just took after her mom. I don't ever really correct this when and if people assume this, because it just seems unnecessary. My brother has been with his fiancée for about 2 years now. A few weeks ago we were all meeting up at my parents' house and my sister-in-law saw an old picture of me, my friend and her husband. She pointed to my friend and asked who she was, and I explained it was Lily's mother. My sister-in-law got quiet and stood in front of the picture for a while. I didn't think much of it. To clarify, she knows my friend died, but I guess didn't know that she had been married, or that Lily is not my bio daughter. I suppose she assumed my daughter was mine and my friend's biological daughter. My sister-in-law got a DNA test done on my daughter behind my back. She used my brother's DNA for the test, and when it came back that they weren't related, she knew that meant me and Lily weren't related. She came up to me with the results and waved them in my face, saying that I was taking care of a dead woman's affair baby. She said this to me in front of my daughter. I just stared at her for a while before bursting out laughing at this. I told her I knew Lily wasn't my biological daughter, and that this thing called adoption exists. Her face went red and she stormed off. My brother is mad I embarrassed his fiancée, but I said she embarrassed herself by DNA testing a kid that isn't hers and then parading the results up to me. What did she want me to do? What was her goal with this? Did she want me to break down and abandon my daughter? My brother said she thought she was doing the right thing and called me a jerk. I don't feel like the jerk here, especially considering my sister-in-law was the one who stuck her nose where it doesn't belong. I'm asking for Reddit opinions, mostly just for validation, so was I the jerk here? Update: my brother lied to my sister-in-law about everything. My sister-in-law ended up coming to my house and apologizing, as well as telling me the full story. My brother put her up to the DNA test. When I first adopted Lily, my brother for some reason believed that Lily was my bio daughter. He thought that me and Lily's mom were together and just weren't telling anyone. He believes that when she got pregnant, Lily's mom told me that Lily was mine and that she was going to just say that it was her husband's, and I went along with it because I didn't really want kids. My sister-in-law was under the impression that I believed I was Lily's bio dad. She saw the picture of Lily's mom and I, and after asking for clarification on who she was, assumed we were together in it, and then got suspicious when she saw that the other guy in the picture, Lily's actual bio dad, looked a lot like Lily. I also want to clarify, I didn't tell her that Lily's bio dad was in the picture because she had specifically pointed to Lily's mom, and I assumed she knew that Lily was adopted. I didn't know my brother had been telling her lies for nearly 2 years. She got the DNA test out of her own suspicions, and my brother helped her with it because he thought it would reveal that I was actually Lily's bio dad. He manipulated her into thinking that it would clear the air of suspicion, when really he was just trying to prove that I was really Lily's bio dad and lying about the reasons for adoption. Well, of course the results proved I wasn't Lily's bio dad and that my brother was wrong. My brother felt too embarrassed to confess to his fiancée that he had lied about the circumstances, which is why my sister-in-law confronted me with the results. My sister-in-law also apologized for showing me the results in front of my daughter. She told me that her mom had an affair and cheated on her father, got pregnant with another man's kid, and had let her father believe the kid was his. Her father was devastated by this when he found out, and she grew very resentful of women who do that to their spouses. She had wanted to sit me down and talk to me about it without my daughter, but when she saw me with my daughter she got angry thinking I was being led on to believe I was raising my daughter when I was actually raising another man's kid, and she ended up exploding and immediately waved the results in my face. My sister-in-law does feel very guilty, and she's angry at my brother for lying to her. I'm not angry at her for doing the test, because she thought she was doing the right thing. I also forgave her for the way she told me about the results, because clearly affairs are a sensitive subject for her and I can understand why she would have exploded like that. I'm pretty sure she plans to break up with my brother now, and I don't blame her. When I called and asked my brother about this, he admitted it. When I asked why he would think this, he said that he couldn't think of a reason why a man who had been against having kids at the time would willingly adopt a baby without having a blood connection to it. He told his wife that I was Lily's bio dad and was aware of the fact. He took it a step further, and said that me and Lily's mom were together at the time of Lily's conception. Both me and my parents are going low contact with my brother for a while now. I know I will forgive my brother eventually, but I can't do that right now. He believed I was low enough to have an affair with a married woman, get her pregnant, take no responsibility, allow her to pass off the kid as another man's, and then only take responsibility because her mom died. That is very telling to me. Story 2.
I'm rethinking my entire relationship because my boyfriend genuinely believes it's worse to cheat on an abuser than to actually be one. To be clear, nobody in this situation is abusive and nobody is a cheater. My boyfriend, 26 male, of 2 years, and I, 24 female, got into an argument that started with a musical waitress, which is about a woman who cheats on her abusive husband with her gynecologist. She's also pregnant. The husband is physically and financially abusive and won't let her leave him, though she is secretly saving up money to enter a pie baking competition, so she can hopefully use the prize money to leave him and find a better future for herself and her baby. Here's my take. I don't condone cheating, but in my opinion, if your partner's hitting you and trying to take all your money, then you don't owe them any loyalty. At that point, you're more of a prisoner than partner, and you don't have to feel bad for cheating. It's better if you don't, because you might be in a lot of danger if your abuser finds out, but I wouldn't shame the cheater. However, in this case, the doctor also has a wife, which the main character knows from the beginning but ignores until she meets said wife, at which point she ends the affair. So, I think she's in the wrong for sleeping with a married man, but not wrong for cheating on her husband. My boyfriend is a lot more religious than I am and says that there is never an excuse for cheating. He says adultery is always a sin, and if she wanted to have a new relationship, she should have waited until she could leave him. He says the husband is wrong for abusing her, but she also made vows to be faithful to him, and 2 wrongs don't make a right. He says he doesn't know if he could remain friends with someone who cheated on her husband, even if he was abusive. Personally, I think this take is freaking crazy. Of course, I didn't say that to his face, and I find his rigid definition of sin and immorality alarming. He says I don't understand because I'm not religious. I said I don't think religion validates not having empathy for an abuse victim and recognizing that the relationship dynamic changes once abuse starts. I also think the idea of cutting off a friend for cheating on her abuser is horrific. He says it shouldn't matter because neither of us plan on abusing or cheating on the other, and he doesn't want to keep going back and forth about it, but I can't stop thinking about it, and the longer I think, the more disturbing I find it. He's never been cheated on or abused, so it's not like some traumatic psychological thing. He just can't wrap his mind around cheating being okay in any circumstance. Up till now, religion has never been a reason for disagreement, and neither of us want kids, so I didn't think it would, but the whole "you don't understand because you're not religious" really got on my nerves. Both of us agree that the doctor is unequivocally wrong both for cheating and for hooking up with a vulnerable patient. He deserves to get dumped and fired and have his medical license revoked, but that's not really relevant. It feels a little ridiculous to end a relationship because of an argument that started with a fictional musical about pie, but here I am. I'm seriously considering it. Edit to clarify, I'm not trying to justify or condone actual cheating in any way. I would never encourage or support someone to cheat, no matter their circumstances. The point of disagreement is that I think the cheater being an abuse victim who can't leave is reason to have compassion for why they did it, and it's messed up to end a friendship over that. Update the next day. First off, thanks for all the replies to the original post. The reason I turned to Reddit was because he was shutting down conversation while I wasn't ready to let it go, and you guys helped me figure out why exactly it bothered me and how to organize my thoughts to better communicate them. As most of you said, the core issue wasn't really about the musical or hypothetical situation, it was about the implication of underlying principles that I didn't agree with and the inconsistency in his religious beliefs, as well as the tone of religious superiority that got to me. So, I brought it up again last night, over FaceTime. We don't live together, fortunately, and he was quite upset that I wouldn't let it go because I'm normally not argumentative like this. It's true that I usually try to find common ground or compromise, but I thought that was weird of him to say. At this point I felt pretty guilty about not letting it slide and I considered dropping it, but I'd spent too much time thinking about it to let it go, and boy am I glad I didn't. I started by asking about why this was a situation that could be dictated solely by religious doctrine, while he's fine with things like premarital love-making, abortion, homosexuality, etc. He gave evasive answers for a ridiculously long time, but eventually it all came out. He is uncomfortable with gay people and distances himself from them too. What about our gay friends? Apparently they're my friends, not our friends. I guess we've only hung out with them in larger groups. Why has he never said anything about this before, even when I excitedly told him that 2 of our female friends were engaged? Apparently he thinks he shouldn't have had to say anything, and I should have known he's not okay with people who live in sin. Also, this couple won't really be married. Huh? I go to Pride every year to support my LGBTQ+ friends. He never criticized me for doing that, so why would I think he had a problem with it? I'm a quiet person by nature, it's not like I don't give him a chance to share his opinion. At this point I start to get really suspicious. I then ask him about abortion and being okay with not wanting kids. Turns out he does want kids. He tried to convince me that I misunderstood when he said he didn't want kids, and he was just saying that he wasn't ready for kids yet but would be in the future. This is an outright lie. I've known since I was about 14 that I never want kids, and I have never wavered on that. I always bring this up within the first few dates, and I distinctly remember him saying that he was looking forward to child-free adulthood, and how much freedom dinks, double income no kids, have. This is when I start to get really upset because I know he's lying to me. Looking back now, I realize I never went back to asking him about abortion because I was so shaken by the kid's revelation. I wouldn't be surprised if he outright lied about being pro-choice as well. The conversation continued with us talking about religion in general. As I said, I'm not religious, and he's never tried to get me to go to church with him or anything. I was raised by immigrant parents who practice a minority religion, but they are not devout/they favor scientific explanations, and they raised me to be respectful of others' beliefs. I thought he understood that. In the past he's asked me about cultural and religious customs and seemed respectful and interested. Turns out he thinks their religion is not real, as opposed to his, and it's interesting to see their customs, but we can't expect them to know better because they weren't well educated. Both of my parents not only went to reputable universities in their original country, but also went on to get master's degrees in the country we live in now. That's when I realized he's a bigot. I also asked him about why he's okay with premarital lovemaking but not any of the other stuff, and he hemmed and hawed and didn't have an answer, which is when I realized he's a horny nincompoop. At this point he's still acting like I'm the bad guy for not automatically knowing all these things he's either never said and not automatically knowing when he meant the opposite of what he said. By now I know that I'm done with this relationship, but I ask him why, if religion is so important to him, he's okay with me not being religious. Long story short, he basically thought that by the time it all came out, I'd be so obsessed with him that I wouldn't dare leave him, and I would become a follower of his religion because let's be honest, he's out of my league and I won't find anyone better now that I'm getting fat. I've gone from a size 2 to a size 4 in 2 years, what the heck? And some frankly racist, elitist crap about how his, rich, family is better than mine. This whole time he was acting like I was ridiculous for overreacting to all these revelations. Finally I told him it was over and he didn't seem to believe me. Whatever, I know I'm done with him. I went to bed angry and upset, but I woke up more relieved that I know the truth now. It's going to take me a while to trust again after all those lies, but better that it happened now when I can make a clean break than if it happened after I'd moved in with him or after I'd gotten pregnant and he'd gotten me arrested for seeking an abortion. Luckily I have the day off work today to process it all mentally. I didn't have any texts or calls from him this morning, so I figured he'd either accepted it or was still in denial. I didn't care much. Then a few hours ago I got a very angry voicemail from his mom, a woman I've met twice and has my number because we exchanged a few recipes, telling me I'm going to hell for, among other things, cheating on her baby boy. That's right, this guy must be a pathological liar or something, because his response to me dumping him for being a liar was to run to mommy with a new lie about me hooking up with some fictional man from work. Forget the fact I'm not a cheater. I don't even work with any men who would fit this lie. I sent the mom a text spelling out the truth and told her I was blocking her, which I did. Since then I've been reaching out to friends to tell them my side of the story before he feeds them a bunch of lies too. Fortunately the ones I've talked to so far believe me, because I was kinda scared about the fact I don't have any proof besides the voicemail, and he is the more charismatic and persuasive one. The friend group is pretty liberal-minded though, and it is bizarre that his opinions never came up before. But I guess he saw them as my friends while his church friends, who I never saw much of, were his friends. Overall, I'm trying to stay optimistic, but it's terrifying how smoothly he could lie to me for so long. It only came out because he let his guard down because we were talking about a fictional story. Initially I felt ridiculous for not letting it drop. Thank you to those who encouraged me to trust my instincts and get to the root of what bothered me. Finally, though it didn't come up again, I'll say again for the record that abuse victims whose partners won't let them leave are prisoners, not partners. They do not owe their captors any loyalty. Infidelity in that context is not a healthy or safe or smart choice, but people make bad choices when they're in survival mode. We don't have to condemn them for it. The number of people on that thread who seem to consider abuse and cheating as equal transgressions is seriously disturbing. Anyway, on to the rest of my life, I guess.
Story 3. My fiancée came out as bisexual and said she needs to explore it before we get married, and now she's all confused because I said I would date other people as well, but I guess this wasn't the open relationship she had in mind. So Betty, 27 female, and I, 30 male, got engaged in January after dating for a couple of years. Our plan was to get married next year when we had saved enough money for the wedding. Shortly after getting engaged, we ended up moving in together. Then in May, Betty was a bridesmaid for one of her friends, and I was unable to attend the wedding due to my job and the fact that it was a 5-day trip. Betty had a great time reconnecting with some of her old friends, but a couple of weeks after she got back she became moody and withdrawn from me. I was pretty relieved when she made an appointment with a therapist since she hadn't opened up to me about what was going on with her. After she went to about 5 or 6 sessions, she sat me down one Saturday morning so we could talk. Betty had been raised in a very conservative household and had to suppress her desires until she moved out to go to college. Even then, certain ideas she still denied and refused to embrace. At the wedding, she was introduced to the wife of one of her girlfriends from college and it triggered a lot of repressed desires over the days they all hung out before the wedding. She told me she felt romantic and physical attraction to women as well as men, and she realized she was bisexual. I told her I was happy she finally felt safe in sharing this with me, but that it didn't change how I felt about her. It was a very emotional moment. She asked me how I felt about her exploring her sexuality now that it was out in the open. I said I was open to exploring it with her and possibly having a 3-way with another woman to let her have that experience. She wanted a one-on-one experience with another woman and felt she couldn't do that with me present. I told her that sounded more like an affair and something I wasn't comfortable with. I asked her if she wanted to cancel the wedding and maybe separate while she figured out what she wanted to do. She was adamant that was not what she wanted and she was still very much in love with me and still wanted to get married, but that she felt like she had to explore these feelings she was embracing before we settled down together. I asked her if she had done anything inappropriate at the wedding and cheated on me. I asked if she had someone in mind or had been talking to someone since she came back. She admitted to dancing with a girl at the reception and they kissed at the end of the night, but nothing else happened. But she denied talking to anyone or pre-planning anything. She knows this was a lot to throw on my plate all at once and she didn't expect an answer right away. She just asked that I keep an open mind and keep talking about it. I couldn't promise anything, but I agreed to do some research and talk to a workmate that has an open marriage to see how they cope. I did warn her if I found out she lied or was doing anything behind my back there would be no second chances and I would leave. My workmate has been super helpful and open about their relationship. My brother got me into a support group that has helped me come to terms with our relationship changes. I'm burning my way through my second book and sat Betty down Thursday night to check in and talk about moving forward. I found us a couples therapist, I gave her the book I had finished, and I told her we should postpone the wedding for 6 months and then decide if that's the path we are still on. I was on a roll when she stopped me and asked me if I was planning on dating other people, as if it never occurred to her that I would be dating as well during this period. She kind of shut down after that, barely giving one-word answers when I would ask her something. I think the longest sentence I got was "I just don't know." She has been like that for 24 hours now, like she is lost in a fog. I'm just bracing myself for the inevitable flood of emotions. I would have thought she would be happy that I was considering opening our relationship. Edit to add, my brother came out as gay when I was 16 and my parents were very supportive, so I grew up in a very different household than my girlfriend. Update, Saturday night her fog lifted and things got pretty heated. She said that the open relationship was my way of punishing her and being vindictive by dating other women. She was just asking for some grace to explore her feelings. I replied that she showed almost no remorse for cheating on me and instead expected an open-ended hall pass to do so again. I told her our friends had told me she asked them not to say anything about what happened at the wedding, so I would probably never know the full truth and just had to accept it was worse than she admitted to. I asked if she thought it was fair to go make love with other people while I waited by the door like some love-sick puppy who was expected just to wag his tail when she decided to come home and show me some attention. It devolved after that and some hurtful things were said by us both. I finally gave her 3 options if she wanted to move forward. 1. Monogamy. Postpone the wedding and go to couples counseling. No experimenting. When we get to a good place then go ahead with the wedding with a prenup to protect me if she changes her mind and or cheats again. 2. Open relationship. We can both date who we want and she can figure out her sexuality on her own terms. In a year or so we can see if marriage still seems like a good option if we are still together. 3. Full-on separation. She moves out and we can each be free to live our lives as we see fit. If or when she decides she wants monogamy with me if I haven't moved on, then we can try option number 1. But it would be a new beginning, not just picking up where we left off. She decided she needed some space to think things out and is going to stay with friends for a couple of days. I told her before she left that if she accidentally cheated while she was gone to not come back except to pick up the rest of her things. This morning I got a text from her, "I'm so sorry." She didn't answer when I asked her what she meant and my call went to voicemail. I'm not going to reach out to her again and I will wait to let her contact me when she is ready. Update 8 days later, on Wednesday, Betty went to her previously scheduled appointment with her therapist and told her what happened between us. Not sure what all was said, but she called me on the way to her friend's house apologizing for some of the things she said and wanted to come home and talk things out. I told her to stay at her friend's house tonight and think about what she wanted and she could come home Thursday and we could sit down and work things out. On Thursday we met at the house and talked over dinner. We both apologized for getting heated and saying some unfair things to each other. After talking to her therapist and having several conversations with her best friend over the last few days, she has decided not to explore her bisexual urges. The idea of a truly open relationship where I was free to sleep with other people terrified her, and getting married was more important than chasing the rainbow. Her original idea had been just a free pass to see if she was missing something in her life and how important it was to her. I asked what was she asking for, a one-night stand, just dating a woman, or having a full relationship. She couldn't tell me exactly what she wanted. I said that didn't sound very monogamous to me or very fair. She agreed and that was why she was giving up on exploring those feelings. Next, she brought up the notes I sent out canceling our save the date notices for our wedding day. She said she was getting all kinds of calls about what happened and was caught unaware about what they were even talking about at first. She was upset I did that without talking to her first. I reminded her that she lobbed 2 grenades in my lap, coming out as bisexual and that she cheated on me, then left and wouldn't talk with me except for a cryptic "I'm so sorry" text followed by silence. While I never said anything other than we were having issues and had to postpone the wedding, evidently there was speculation that she had cheated on me. She switched gears and said we could still get back on track and get married next spring. No, because now when one of us is out of town my mind will be thinking about you cheating again, especially after coming out and wanting to have an affair to explore your sexuality. I said maybe after couples therapy we could get back to a good place again, but not by the end of the year, and it would be foolish to start planning and making financial commitments before we even knew if therapy was going to work. Plus I wanted a prenup to protect everything I brought into the marriage as well as my future retirement savings. Plus she would forfeit any equity if we bought a house. When she protested, I said if you plan to be faithful and not change your mind later, then it would never be a thing. Just something to give me some peace of mind. It's been an ongoing conversation for the last few days. Betty wants to rug sweep the incident at the wedding and move forward with our wedding. Exploring her sexuality is not worth sacrificing our relationship, in her opinion. For now, we are back together and planning on counseling soon. In a post-clarity moment, I realize I rushed to embrace the idea of an open relationship to allow Betty the freedom to explore her new feelings, and I'm not as willing now to consider that option. I think separation is the better option, breaking up if you will, till we both decide what direction our future lies and if it is with each other. It's not what I want, but I also don't want to spend the next 3 to 5 years together only for her to change her mind or cheat on me one day. Second update 2 weeks later. What a crappy week. Counseling started badly, walked into the office and saw a large pride flag on the wall. Our therapist was very biased towards my girlfriend's predicament. Glossed right over the cheating and into how I needed to better support Betty's awakening and support her journey to blah, blah, blah. Betty is the one who is confused, and I am not giving her a safe place to explore who she is. Nothing about my feelings or needs was addressed. To make matters worse, when the therapist was piling on me, I looked to Betty to stand up or say something positive for me, and I got nothing. That part hurt me the most, and I pretty much shut down for the remainder of the session. Towards the end, the therapist did try to engage with me because you could tell she knew she had completely lost me. On the drive home, Betty tried to talk to me and I gave her the 3 answers I kept repeating to the therapist: sure, nope, and maybe. This was the therapist her individual therapist recommended us to. The next day I got a call from Betty's mom at my work wanting to know why we were postponing the wedding and that her family and friends had already started making plans. I told her she needed to take that up with her daughter. She kept badgering me until I finally told her Betty made out with someone at her friend's wedding and that was why things were on hold, and then I hung up on her. Less than an hour later I got a call from Betty demanding to know what I told her mom. I said you kissed someone at a wedding and we were trying to work through it, and that I didn't mention Betty coming out to me. I told her she needed to sit her mom down and tell her the whole truth, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So I get this text from her mom telling me I need to suck it up and move past this, and that I might even be at fault for not going to the wedding with her. Huge text giving me what for and trying to tell me what I need to do. I showed the text to Betty when she got home from work and said she needed to do something about her mom or I would enlighten her with the full story of all our problems the next time she tried to tear me a new one. Betty said she would handle her mom and made me promise to give her some time to tell her mom everything. Also this week Betty has gotten very protective of her phone. Yeah, major red flag. I went to charge my phone and unplugged hers to plug mine in, and she almost flew across the room to practically snatch her phone out of my hand. I was able to sneak a look at her phone later while she was asleep, only to find she had changed her access code, something which she hadn't done since we had been together. I went online and looked at our phone bill, and there were many lengthy calls to a Colorado area code, which I have found out is where the girl she kissed was from. I am just mentally exhausted at this point, the gaslighting, lying, and just feeling like I am treading water all the time. Lately, when we've been intimate, there is a lack of passion in her that was there before all this. I feel love bombed without the feeling. Feels like just hollow words and empty gestures. Tomorrow we are going to a cookout at her parents' house. I am going to try and keep my cool and not say anything, crossing my fingers. But when we get back I am telling Betty I'm done. I'll give her the choice of keeping the apartment or moving out. She will be free to explore and find what truly makes her happy, just won't be me. I came clean with my parents and a few friends about this whole mess. My tribe is ready to help support me and help with the move when I need them. Dad vetoed Mom's offer to move back home and said what I really needed was a new puppy, definitely too old to live with my retired parents. Feels weirdly peaceful now that I've made my mind up. To all of you who told me so, you were right, time to move on with my life. Third update 1 more day later. Betty and I returned early from a cookout at her parents' house. I had planned for my sister to be at our house when we got back as a witness, but had to wait a couple of hours for her to show up. I got us all in the living room and told Betty I couldn't do it anymore and was throwing in the towel. I said I had lost all trust in her and couldn't see a way forward, and that the best choice was to just go our separate ways. Betty couldn't understand what I was saying and that she had been honest since her confession about what happened at the wedding. I asked if she had been in contact with the girl she kissed at the wedding and she denied it. I asked to see her phone and she refused, saying it would violate her privacy and the privacy of the people she had talked to. Fine, so who did you call with a 720 area code, and maybe I should call and see who answers. Doesn't really matter because it proves my point. I gave her a choice of moving out or staying, and I would move out. I also said I would give her what she had contributed to our savings account for the wedding. She tried to get my sister to leave or get me alone to talk, but I told her I had been advised to have a witness present just in case. She went from crying to being angry, and after an hour and a half, she finally had a calm conversation about everything, and we talked until almost midnight. This morning Betty decided to move back to her parents temporarily, and the 3 of us packed up her things. While we waited for her dad and brother to come get her things, she tried to get me to go to a different counselor and give therapy another chance, but I said it was just a waste of time. I could never trust her again, and that was no way to live. Not much of an ending, but that's all I got for you. Final word from OP in the comments. I dropped a box with some things of hers we missed and some of her mail at her work today. She wanted to talk and possibly meet for dinner to talk, but I told her we just need to move on and left. I have blocked her on everything and just want to put everything behind me. Story 4.
My roommate kept calling my boyfriend our boyfriend, but when she showed up in nothing but a bathrobe trying to come on to him, I decided it's time for her to find a new place to live. I, 19 female, have been dating my boyfriend Will, 20 male, for about 6 months now. I have been in relationships before, but this is definitely my first serious and healthy one, and I'm really happy with him. We met in our hometown, but we go to different universities that are about 2 hours apart. However, we try to see each other whenever we can, maybe about every 3 weeks. Usually, Will come and visit me, because 1. He has a car, so it's cheaper and more convenient for him, plus bus routes between our cities no longer exist since Greyhound shuttered, and 2. A lot of his courses are still online only, whereas I have in-person lectures, and 3. My house is a lot nicer than his. Whenever he visits, he stays for 4 to 5 days, which my roommates are okay with. He's also very nice and helpful. If I'm doing chores, he'll help take out the trash, wash dishes, or make me breakfast, etc. One of my roommates, Cass, 19 female, was dumped near the end of September, and since then, I felt like she has been weird with Will. A few examples. 1. Sometimes he'll cook for me if I'm busy at school or working late at the lab, and oftentimes he'll make enough for my roommates too. Almost every time this happens, Cass makes comments about how he's so sweet and that she wishes she had someone like him and how her ex could never. Will and I usually reassure her and say she'll definitely find someone who'll treat her right, but she just looks at him expectantly. Expecting what? I don't know. 2. When he helps with manly stuff like taking out the trash, installing a hook in my room, moving heavy things, she always makes sure to linger around and comment about how strong he is and how I'm lucky to have such a fit partner. 3. Whenever he visits, we literally can't avoid her. If we go out, Cass will ask to come with. My roommates and I use an app that tracks our location for safety reasons, and when I go out with Will and don't tell her, she'll usually text me asking me where I'm going, what my plans are, if I want to hang out, etc. We try to stay in my room, but if Will goes into the kitchen or something, Cass will always happen to wander in. We even have to lock my bedroom door when we sleep to make sure she doesn't come in. 4. I'm not much of a drinker, but after our midterms, Cass wanted to have a little thing with just the roommates. It was fun. We drank a little and watched movies. I'm pretty lightweight, so I got sloshed pretty fast, and at some point I was calling Will, and when Cass found out I was calling him, she was like, "Is that Will?" and kept ripping the phone from my hands very aggressively. She's a lot stronger than I am, and really loudly started talking about her intimate life and asking him about his, saying shit like, "Make sure you hit it deep." This is pretty in character for Cass, who claims to enjoy making people uncomfortable and makes these kinds of comments for shock value, but I felt like she should have turned it off around my boyfriend. She was only tipsy at this point, not really drunk. Overall, anytime he's nice to her, she'll say things like, "Haha, it's almost like you're my boyfriend," and whenever she refers to him around me, she'll call him our boyfriend as a joke, but I still feel weird about it. Will finds this all very uncomfortable and tries his best to avoid Cass as best he can or shut her down when she makes those comments. I'm not sure if I should bring it up with her, because on one hand, I'm very uncomfortable, but on the other hand, I feel like she'll just deny everything or say it's all for jokes and maybe get hostile with me. Any advice appreciated. Update. Hey there, a couple people were asking for an update, so here it is. I also found out this post blew up on TikTok, which is pretty funny because Cass has a crippling TikTok addiction. I read pretty much all the comments, discuss stuff with Will, and we decided that I'd try bringing it up with my other roommates, and if the behavior persisted while he was here, we try our best to shut the behavior down jokingly or by using social pressure. To give an idea of the timeline, I made my original post under a week before he was supposed to visit. So the following things happened. Before his visit, I was alone with one of my roommates, Jen, and I started to bring up Cass's behavior around Will. I didn't even get a sentence in before Jen stopped me and said, "I know. She's been weird." Apparently, Jen and our fourth roommate Eva have discussed this before, but they weren't sure if I even noticed because I didn't seem to react. Jen is definitely the closest to Cass. We all went to high school together, but I was only really friends with Eva at that time. She said she brought it up privately with Cass after Will's last visit, and Cass just did that thing where she talks and incoherently defends herself. Eva and Jen agreed to step in if crap got out of hand with her. Cass was very excited for Will's visit, and would say stuff like, "Oh, I can't wait to see him," or "just a few more days." I have a test from 7 to 9 p.m. on his second day here, and apparently she talked to Jen about picking out a movie for the two of them to watch while I wrote my biochem test. She settled on Sinister 2 for anyone wondering. Jen said that she was out of line, but again, Cass just incoherently defends herself. Every time she made comments like that, my roommates and I would just silently give her a look and say, "Okay, anyways," and change the subject, which seemed to at least make her self-conscious. During his visit, Cass was all over him as soon as he got here, pouting and saying, "Where's my hug?" Jen hugged her instead, and we used this time to escape into my room. Lol. Day 2 rolls around, and as soon as I'm out of the house, she tries to get Will to watch the movie with her, saying she really wants to watch it but doesn't think she can do it alone. Will politely declines and continues playing video games in my room, and she leaves. Throughout the rest of the visit, I'm firm with her, telling her she can't come on our dates, saying she's being weird when she makes comments about how hot he is or how he's our boyfriend. Will has also done what one commenter suggested and just point blank say that he's my boyfriend and that he'll never be hers. At some point, he's so aggravated he stops talking to her or acknowledging her at all because he was worried he would yell at her. I've never heard him raise his voice before this. As time wore on, I feel like she got increasingly desperate for Will's attention. This is the absolute craziest part. Just now, while I was showering, Cass went into my room, where Will is, in her underwear and a bathrobe, saying she knows he's playing hard to get but that he can't resist her, barf. Will started yelling at her to get the heck out, which alerted myself and my roommates. Eva and Jen dragged a tearful Cass out of my room. She even called me a skinny beach on her way out. I think they're going to drop her off at a friend's house tonight. I'm just floored. I really did not expect her to go nuclear like this, but goddamn. Update 2. I saw some questions on my first update, but my post was locked before I could answer, as that was a pretty busy night, so I'll do my best to answer them now. Why did I need to lock the door when I slept? Basically, Cass would just come in and bother us, usually when she suspected we were making love. Even if we were just chilling or sleeping, Cass would come in and just talk at us. Sometimes she'd switch it up and just be crying. At first it seemed pretty harmless and we'd soothe her, but I grew weary as she never took these problems to our roommates. Why did Will keep coming over? As I said before, transportation between our universities no longer really exists unless we have a car. My family is not very well off, so me getting a car is not feasible, and honestly before this visit, it wasn't the biggest deal. She was just a little annoying, but it wasn't worth Will driving over 4 hours plus me missing school. So on to the update. I talked with my roommates, and Jen called Cass's mom. As pissed as I am, I'm obviously very concerned for Cass, as even though she wasn't the most pleasant person before, none of us could have expected her absolutely unhinged behavior. Cass has gone back home with her parents now. I haven't pried, so I don't know exactly what their plans are now or how she's doing, but it seems like she'll be away for a while, as her parents came back to pick up almost all of her belongings. They'll continue to pay her share of the rent and even left some apology pastries, which was very nice of them. As awful as that experience was for Will and I, we ultimately decided not to file any kind of complaint or restraining order for the time being, as her parents seem to have the situation under control, and we didn't want to drag the issue out longer than it needs to be. I hope this is the final update. Thanks for following my story. Update 3. I wasn't really planning on making another update, but I saw that a lot of people were asking for one, though it is kinda boring. Will and I are still going strong and we're completely safe. I haven't heard from Cass since, but she still talks to Jen occasionally. From what I gather, the stress of school plus her breakup exacerbated some underlying issues which caused her to snap. I believe she's in an inpatient psychiatric facility, though it's unclear how long she'll be there or what exactly is going on with her. Her parents also suspect she may have been self-medicating with drugs, but it's nothing more than a suspicion at this point, and regardless, she's definitely clean now. Sorry this one was kinda boring. Unless something else happens, this'll probably be my last update on the situation. Thank you for your interest and well wishes.
Story 5. I've been with my wife for 10 years, and today she just came out as a lesbian and told me she's not attracted to me, but that she still wants to stay married to me, just without the physical side of things. My wife, 29 female, and I, 35 male, have been together for 10 years and married for 4. She was and still is the love of my life, and the thought of living life without her is quite unbearable. But yesterday morning I woke up and noticed her sitting on the patio crying, so I obviously went to go comfort her and figure out what was wrong. While fighting back tears, she manages to tell me that she's a lesbian and she's so sorry, and that she isn't attracted to me anymore, but she also doesn't want to leave me. I've always known she was into women as well, but it was never an issue for me. We've had quite a few three-ways with different women over the years and they've all been amazing. I've even been fine with her exploring that side of herself with other women without me involved, because I just wanted her to be happy and fulfilled. The entire day was spent either crying or talking about our now uncertain future. All the plans we had made about buying a home, traveling the world, getting dogs and cats, retirement, it all went up in smoke. We had a fantastic intimate life up until just a few days ago. We would be intimate at least a few times a week and we rarely failed to get each other off. We experimented and grew with each other over the years, exploring new fun things and figuring out new ways to please one another. I told her I didn't blame her, that if she really is a lesbian it's not her fault and she hasn't really done anything wrong. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. She's my best friend. We had and have such a wonderful, supportive relationship, and we've been through so freaking much together. I can't stand the thought of losing her and starting over. She said she doesn't want to leave me, that she still wants a future with me, just without the lovemaking. But she also understands how unfair that is to me, so she's fine with me finding a F buddy or two if I want it. All I really want is her though. I'm so insanely attracted to her and I make sure to tell her so every day. She's the most attractive woman in the world to me, but finding out that attraction is one-sided has obviously shattered my heart and crippled my self-esteem. I don't know what to do. I'm certain most of the comments I get will be along the lines of move on or the classic lawyer up, start hitting the gym, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that. I'm praying she's going to wake up one of these days and realize she made a mistake, that she's just overwhelmed and confused. Deep down I know that's not how this works, but the wounds are still so fresh I'm grasping at any little straws of hope I can find. We don't have any kids, all our pets have passed away, but we did just move into a new house last week, so we may be stuck together until next March at least. I just want my wife back. Update 1 year later. Hola Reddit. Long time no talk. I figured it was about time to update y'all on the roller coaster that has been the last year of my life. Allow me to start with a few apologies. Sorry for the jumbled mess that was my original post. I was a mess at that time, and apologies to everyone that reached out that I didn't get back to. There were a lot of you and it became too much to continue replying with the same answers over and over. I appreciate every one of you that reached out with kind words and those that shared their similar experiences. 1 year ago today, I woke up and got out of bed blissfully unaware of the fact that my life was about to completely crumble around me. That morning I found my wife on our back patio, clearly in distress. So obviously I put on my best husband hat and went to figure out what the issue was. I assumed it was something work-related, but I was very wrong. While fighting back tears, she manages to tell me that she's a lesbian and she's so very sorry. I'll never forget the feeling of the world closing in on me as the most intense fear, panic, confusion and grief began to set in. Initially she said she wasn't going to leave me, that we could do couples therapy and figure out a path forward together. Of course I agreed. 3 days after receiving that news, I was informed by my mother that my stepdad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. 3 days after that, I was told by my father that my stepmom was also diagnosed with skin cancer. Thankfully my stepmom had surgery and is cancer-free. But my stepdad wasn't as fortunate. He passed away last November. He was a wonderful, funny, kind, successful and impressive man and I really miss him a lot. Having all of these things hit me within a week caused me to completely spiral out of control. I refrained from going to work, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I merely existed. I became one with my couch and distracted myself with hockey podcasts and weed. My wife did her best to be there for me, but she was obviously going through her own turmoil and she retreated into her own world, physically and emotionally. For a bit of backstory, she had spent her life with crippling anxiety, and the mere thought of a tough conversation was enough to cause her to break down crying. But months prior to all this, she had begun taking anti-anxiety meds, so now she was finally able to communicate to me not only that she was gay, but all the other times I had let her down. 10 years worth of moments I had been inconsiderate or insufficient as a partner. I always thought we had communicated well, but apparently that was more one-sided. And I had always thought I did a wonderful job as a husband. I tried to be attentive, thoughtful, caring and compassionate. I was never abusive or cheated. We rarely fought, and when we did we always ended up talking it out like adults. I thought I was doing a great job, but I wasn't doing the things she needed out of a partner. But since she never communicated it to me, how was I to know? Hearing about all these little moments that I had let her down hurt like hell, but it also gave me a light at the end of the tunnel. A mission. Save marriage. I couldn't do anything about her being gay, but I could damn sure make up for every instance of neglect. I put together a plan to prove to her I was worth staying with. I surprised her with a picnic, got us tickets to the circus, made a reservation at a restaurant for the first time in my life and took her out for her favorite kind of food. I begun learning French, she's French-Canadian, I took the lead on planning our next big vacation. I started writing her a song. I was going to give her guitar lessons since she had expressed interest in the past. I spent every minute of every day for the next 2 months figuring out ways to show her just how much she meant to me. She was also able to confess that she wanted children. We had agreed early on that kids weren't on the table, but she had a change of heart. And for her I would have absolutely done it, and I told her so numerous times. In May, she left the country for a girls' trip to the Dominican. It had been planned for at least a year. We agreed to go minimal contact during the week-long trip so she could get her head straight and really figure out what she wanted. We actually hooked up the day before she left, and it was the first time in 2 months I felt like everything was actually going to be okay. But the day she came home, she officially ended our marriage. Now one of the toughest parts of this situation was we had just moved into a big new house with a few roommates on March 1st. Neither of us could afford to have her just move out right away. It would have screwed ourselves and our roomies over financially. We live in Vancouver and it's bloody expensive here. So we figured out a system of sharing the room. There were even times where we would still share the bed, but it eventually became too painful. So I renovated the large shed in our backyard with a futon, air conditioning and a TV and basically lived in it all summer. She began dating someone, so as time went on, she was gone more and more until she had basically moved out but continued to pay rent. During these months, so many people close to me went through tragedies too. One of my closest friends lost his mom to cancer. A good friend from high school lost his wife to cancer too. I had known her through work, and got to see them begin their relationship, get married and have a beautiful daughter, only for it to end so unbelievably tragically. And mere weeks before my stepdad's passing, my stepsister's longtime partner chose to end his life. The amount of grief I felt for myself and those close to me was unbearable. Unfathomable. So much loss in such a short period of time. Every day for months I thought about ending it all, but kept going, mostly because I couldn't do that to my parents. For all the bad that took place, there was actually some good. I quit my toxic but well-paying job in May due to being so overwhelmed and their lack of sympathy towards my situation. And that led me to find an absolute dream job a few months later. Now I work as the quality control guy for a large music retailer's guitar department. I get to play, test and fix guitars every day, and it's a dream come true. A few buddies and I entered a radio contest last summer and actually won it. We improvised a 30 seconds commercial, submitted it, and out of 80 plus entries, we won $10,000 in nationwide play. My ex-wife actually saw our commercial play on the big screen before a movie once. I started a stupid YouTube channel with a good friend doing dumb reaction videos. It's not even remotely successful yet, but it's a fun outlet. The Christmas prior to my wife coming out, She had bought me the Blu-ray box set of the entire Dragon Ball Z series. And somehow we managed to watch all of it. Before, during, and after the split. I'm quite proud of that for us. And finally, last November I met someone really special. She was also out of a long-term marriage and they had split for pretty much the same reason. We've been officially dating since New Year's Day. She's absolutely wonderful. Beautiful, intelligent, successful, and an insanely talented artist. She's inspired me to start painting and I've inspired her to take up guitar. We've been helping each other heal and enjoy life again. My ex and I are on good terms. We still care about one another and only want the best for each other. She was there when we saw my stepdad for the last time. She and my mom are still friendly, which honestly makes me really happy, and she officially moved out on March 1st of this year. It's been a wild ride. From breaking down and bawling my eyes out 10 times a day, to where I am now. With the best job I've ever had and a fun, promising new relationship. I truly didn't think I'd make it through, but I have. Thanks for reading, y'all. Story 6.
I'm pretty sure my husband secretly fathered all of his best friend's kids, and now their eldest son is trying to date our daughter, and it's driving me insane because they could be siblings, and if I'm right, our entire family is screwed. This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years it has bloomed into a poison flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman. My husband Luke is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7 years old. They did everything together and understood each other implicitly. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about. That their bond was not romantic and had never been sexual. That Amy really was just the sister that Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any and all insecurities I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together and we always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I passed many a night on the towns trying to help Amy find a man, as she has always talked about how she is unlucky in love. Luke and I started to have children after we were married, and, at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Haley, 14, and twins, Adam and Jenna, 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically Amy would find herself pregnant as well. It happened a few times, and Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no, and she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, of course Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes, they are the kindest and gentlest people, so we were able to support Amy. To get her somewhere to stay with her kids. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help and we had the means to help provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that is a long story that I don't want to get into because even I don't fully understand her reasoning, but it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control and that whatever came of that choice, she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it was that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why. Of course, Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that sometimes they hang out together while I'm not there. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more. She was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying and at times, sleeping over there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years, they presented as being buddies. Like siblings. I didn't pick up on any vibes between them, not ever. As one can expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house, but we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along and strong bonds of friendship have formed over the years, which is good. Especially if I'm right, and they share blood. I've been dawdling getting to the main point. Yes. I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess I cannot remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties, I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen, so when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again, and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know. But Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me, or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. By itself, it's not weird that he's like a dad to Amy's kids who don't have a father. You might even say it's a good thing. But when you put it together with a bunch of other small issues, it starts to look suspicious. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits, because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy and, guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids, or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy. But he either missed my cues or pretended that he missed them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favoring her, because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. So as far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world she instantly fell in love with them, but motherhood was never really a major part of her life plan or identity. In the grand scheme of things, when we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. So I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity. That would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. Got worse after the twins were born. I dismissed it. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety much worse. There have been nights that I wish the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be very wrong. Except now I'm very afraid, because in the last few months we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest kid, asked Sophie out. Sophie, my eldest. She's really blossomed over these last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention, but Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk to me about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no, and that caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly, she just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to. And I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them. Wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up, but I don't know, she just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone, or with other friends, any time they possibly could. It's become clear that Tom is pretty crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her. And he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eyes wandering many times, and while I'm doing everything I can to kill this budding romance in the crib, I also am feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me, she's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. so forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable, and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating, and doing God knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection whatsoever, and I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, of course, that if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and he won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well, and I know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him. But that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll probably pursue this, and once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've just given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school. It's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes, something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close, this close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me these many years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's son wants to screw our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I am wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life, and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie's eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend. And I'm low-key terrified it will happen sooner than later, or worse, that it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry, want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father, and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I don't even want to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent. They didn't ask for this, they don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago I saw him put his hand on Sophie's butt and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But even he doesn't deserve to be burdened by the knowledge that it's his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's also messed up and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it. But this business with Tom and Sophie has me going mad. Update 3 days later. First of all, wow. I did not expect my post to get as much traction as it did. I was half worried that someone in my family or social circle might find it, especially when someone alerted me that the post had been shared to Facebook. But, as far as I can tell, no one in my family has seen it. I want to thank all of the kind commenters who wished me well. To those who were more frustrated with my indecision, I get it. But I was operating with an uncertain situation and the stakes were incredibly high. I feel like no matter what choice I made, something could and likely would go wrong. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on different ways I could go about this if I ever decided to act on it. To everyone who is clamoring for an update, I have one for you. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, that I had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I am regretting that, because the window to do so has essentially closed. I just felt like it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against doing so, because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyway, and just not told anyone. Because I really, badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like I had no right to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So, what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them, because I figured they would tell the other about what happened in their own words before I could prepare my own. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid down all of my suspicions and the reasons. I made it clear how much I loved both of them, but a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children. And I didn't even list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past. So have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I had dismissed it before, but now, with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to pose the question. So I asked if they had ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying not to cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I would have expected. Their responses were perfect and so very well rehearsed. I genuinely can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outwardly upset. She was angry, offended at the accusation. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow they had reasonable responses to all of the points I brought up. They asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I had never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much, or are things like hair color pretty basic traits to have in common? The whole family had always treated Amy and her kids as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father to Amy's kids since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? What exactly did I want them to do? How could I think such a thing about them? Why had I waited so long to say something? Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to feel more betrayed by what I said. I ended up apologizing several times even though I'm not sure I did anything wrong. Luke also apologized for anything he'd done to indicate he was unfaithful. I asked Amy more pointedly that, if not Luke, who had fathered her children. She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was in no mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper, and said that after everything we had done for her and her children, such information was not a lot to ask and perhaps she owed it to us. I regretted the words as soon as I said them, but Amy shouted back that, I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who had kept her afloat all these years, not me. She went on a longer tirade about how I had always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did, though it's possible that I gave off that vibe unintentionally. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still fraught with tension. I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. There is a way to be certain, of course. Not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter, and for our family unit, if he could please get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this, that him giving me his word that he had always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in a DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this. But Amy was infuriated at the whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA and basically told me to piss off for asking, several times in several variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly he was a bit useless but probably right. He tried to convince Amy but she wouldn't hear of it, and he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support. Because he can't force her to get the tests done, if she refuses, that's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is that, to do this, he'd essentially be claiming he slept with Amy and he believes her children to be his. That would be the version of events he'd be maintaining. But Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing ever happened with Amy. That he never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he'd essentially have to go on record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He is quite certain the children aren't his and he has no intention of fighting for custody of them, so no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Tom is also old enough that his consent would be a factor. If both he and Amy refuse to participate in the test, it's unlikely that Luke would have a case. He'd have to target one of Amy's younger children, like say, one of the twins. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his words, he already knows isn't true. Luke is asking me to please just let this go, and trust him, because pursuing this will fracture everything. And according to my lawyer, it's not realistic anyway. For Luke to establish paternity, he would need to admit to an affair in the first place, and he's not doing that. And if he did, that would pretty much be all the proof I needed to be certain, even if I'd need more in a court case. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie. Insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Luke plans to have a talk with Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. Among other things, he's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I wouldn't actually press charges against him as I know he'd never do anything against Sophie's will, but I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'd be open to potentially swiping a sample of Tom's DNA to do a private paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would mean the end of our friendship with her, most likely. Things are, Luke believes, still in a salvageable state, where Amy and I could reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this to happen. But, if I did a DNA test on Tom behind Amy's back and she found out, I think she would hit the roof and I wouldn't entirely blame her. Though I'd be very interested to see the results. Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. I know all of you are cringing and throwing up your hands, and trust me, I wasn't happy about it. That was a very long conversation. But he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control. So they spent the night together, with Luke maintaining that nothing happened. I did not sleep a wink and I kept texting him for updates. So far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. It was an emotionally fulfilling conversation and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before and they were delighted to have us. I just really wanted our family to spend some time together away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I'll refer to them as Jim, 75 male, and Kat, 67 female. I know Reddit is famous for stories about the mother-in-law from hell, but in my life that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel safe with them. To the point that, when they took notice of how distant Luke and I were from each other, I finally relented and confessed my fears. I told them of my anxiety that Amy and Luke were having an affair, and that Amy's children might be his. Here's where things got a little bit interesting. When I told them what I was feeling, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look, and did a big, dramatic sigh. So it turns out, Kat has had similar misgivings to mine and genuinely suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they'd ever admit, that they had crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refuses to even consider the idea. He has always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings and would never do such a thing. Kat thinks his stance on this is naive and that, even if she and Jim had taken Amy in and loved her like a daughter, that didn't mean Luke viewed her as a sister or that she viewed him as a brother. But Jim just continued to insist that this is what they are and had always been. I could tell that he and Kat have already had this conversation before, and they kept going in circles, with Kat getting exasperated. She pointed out that, surrogate siblings or not, Luke and Amy were not actually brother and sister, so nothing was stopping them from being physical together if they felt a mutual attraction. At that point, Jim just sighed and walked away from the conversation. So yes, Kat has privately wondered if Amy's children weren't fathered by Luke, which is part of why she has always treated them as her grandchildren. Which was never something that I minded, to be clear. I also don't mind that Kat never voiced these concerns to me. She had no proof, and she saw far less of Luke and Amy's closeness in our adult lives than I did. As for the kids, they're doing all right. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the general consensus, the official version of events, is that Amy and I had a fight and need a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the questions, saying it wasn't their business. I don't know if Amy kept to that version of events, but my children and her children have each other's phone numbers and social media, so they've presumably still been in contact over the last 2 days. I think my kids would have kept Amy's kids in the loop on the updates, and if Amy had told them anything else significant, they would have relayed that information to my kids. After all, we know Sophie and Tom are very close. I did try and talk to Sophie about that more, but the timing was off, because Sophie rejected my counsel and interpreted my reinforced reluctance as being attributed to my fight with Amy. She maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know, but she was going to remain close friends with him, and while she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one, and, to be fair, I can't really justify trying to separate them or forbid them from being friends. They've known each other for years. Luke has my back on them not being allowed to date, but he wouldn't have my back on them not hanging out anymore. I wish I had a more definitive update. If anything significant happens in the next few days, I can let you guys know. I'm mostly just kicking myself for not having done the secret test, even for my own peace of mind, as now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof one way or the other.